Welcome to another Keelhauled podcast. I'm your host, Captain Logun, and we've got a lot of Sea of Thieves news to cover today. So tie yourselves to the mast and hold fast. Ahoy there, pirates. I hope you had yourselves a good week and a good weekend. I know I did. This week, we're going to be talking all about the Smuggler's Tide and the Reaper Fortresses with Act 3 of Season 17. It's a doozy, so let's get into it. But before I get into any of that, I have to thank the patrons. They're the ones that went over to patreon.com/Keelhauled podcast to support this content. And if it wasn't for them, I would be having a much harder time making this for you. So pirates, as always, I like to shout out the patrons. They're the ones that are helping produce the podcast by paying the bills, literally paying the bills for Keelhauled. If it wasn't for their money, I would be paying for a lot of this out of pocket, which means less ancient coin, which means bad choices that I don't get to make when purchasing items, which at the end of the day, me purchasing things like the Jackalooter stuff, is it really a bad idea? Or is it just me really getting into the whole festival of the damned thing? I think it's more me getting into the festival of the damned thing, but if it weren't for the patrons, I would be having a lot less fun during this spooky season, which I hope you guys are enjoying as well too. There's a ton of stuff always going on in games that are doing Sea of Thieves kind of Halloween stuff, but better. I'm gonna be honest, it's better. It's just, I don't know what to tell you. We need to have spooky stuff like cursed islands with graves and low-lying fog and skeletons with jack-o'-lanterns on their heads and stuff like that. We need cool stuff like that rare. But at the end of the day, if it weren't for the patrons, I wouldn't be able to have so much fun celebrating in Sea of Thieves with the stuff that they bring. So I appreciate them doing that. And as such, I like to call out their names for each episode. I did want to shout out, there was one, let's see, Dreaming Nomad joined as a free member. And I just wanted to shout that out because the free members are always nice. We also had David C join up as a free member. Not always the free members. We also had Matthew recently become a gold member from a free member. So folks came in, and sometimes they come in as a free member and they just want to, be part of the Patreon community. And I appreciate that just for the sake of them wanting to join up. So shout out to them for jumping in. Just kind of nice every once in a while. It's always good to kind of just call out the free folks jumping on as a member, just to show their support. But the people that are supporting monetarily always get the call out. So thank you to A Chick, L Cute, Balls, Blue Turtle V1, Captain Chonky, Captain Longsharts, Chateau Noof, Super Pack, Zombie Killer, Cosmic Johnson, Static Mirror, Crazy Frog, Davram TV, El Jefe Esteban, Godhammer 6, Carl Embo of Embo Family Gaming, Kylia the Aficionado, Elvin Vramir, Evil Morpheus, Space Admiral Ors, Xbox Mike 29, Rabid Raccoon, Regis Stella the Brony Pirate, Ribloid, Rustbelt Kid, Sea Leg Sam, Shoe Daddy 13, Skamelt 666, Tales of the Sea, The Demon Jester, Tommy D, TN Professor, Wailing Witch, Big Bad Pad, Mina Fairy, Hager Owl, Jeff H, Captain Duckweed, Evil Martha, Peter Miller, Rooski Doo, Thor Von Blitz, Luke Lore the Insipid Ghost, and Zam. Wow. I appreciate you, buddy. But thank you all so much for your love, for your support. It really does mean the world to me, and it really does help. I wish that it was one of those things where I could be like, it doesn't, it's, you know what? Everyone gets access. We're just going to, everyone's a patron. I won the lottery. I'm making everyone a patron. One day, maybe I'll get there. But until then, thank you patrons for your love, for your support. It really does, really, really, really does help. First on today's docket, let's talk about the new Reaper's Fortress. This has been the new kind of final act in season 13 or season 17 in Act 3. Hopefully you all got the heist done because that has ended And if you were hoping to get the rewards for that, then it's going to be kind of tough because you can't do the heist anymore. So it's good to see that the Reaper Fortress stuff is actually being taken pretty well. I think a lot of folks are actually enjoying it. There's a lot to it. So I'm trying to think of how I want to approach this, but I do want to make sure that I get some of the interesting tidbits of information out to you while I can. I guess in this case, let's start off with the actual deeds for Act 3, as I think that those are going to be something that most people are probably going to forget about. And if no one else is going to talk about it, then it's probably good that I do. So Smuggler's Run, as we know, was broken up into 3 acts. The first acts had you kind of go in and do some of the normal stuff that you would do with the Smuggler's runs, and in this case you had to kind of opt into a heist. You had to do time limited things in Act 2, but Act 1 was mostly go talk to a lot of people like Wei Lin or Lottie. You've also got to talk to Kadir, Leander, all these characters that you had to go and learn about, as well as like destroying Reaper's rowboats, deliver Skulls of Siren Sorrow to the Smugglers League, as well as like rowboats dock to your boat, sink a smuggling skeleton ship with a black powder keg, stuff like that. And a lot of folks probably already got most of these knocked out. If you didn't, then definitely make sure that you're going to do so in season 17. In Act 2, you were asked to go out and complete the heist. And you had to get to Royal Crest Fortress. You had to use the key. You had to unlock the doors. You had to defeat the skeleton captains, as well as smuggle the paintings, right? And win those in. That has then since been completed. That is no longer accessible. With Act 3, this is going to be focused predominantly on the Reaper Fortresses, which is the new upgraded version of the Skeleton Fortresses. Now, you can still dive to Skeleton Fortresses as far as I can tell, but for all intents and purposes, the regular Skeleton Forts are now Reaper Fortresses. They've had graffitied paint, talking about, Pirates for All Eternity. They've had traps installed into a lot of areas. There's now a skeleton at arms, as well as a cache of arms that you can get special loot for throughout that. And you'll still deal with the skeleton lords, which, shout out to YouTube, you guys called out the Duchess was the name that I forgot last episode. So thank you for that. But in this case, you want to defeat skeletons using a black powder barrel while on an active Reaper Fortress. You can defeat Dark Brethren ghost ships during an active Reaper Fortress. You'll need to complete one of them for sure. Deliver a Skull of Arms to the Smugglers League, which is important because if you deliver a skull, you cannot use it to unlock the weapons cache at a Reaper Fortress using the Skull of Arms on the active Reaper's Fortress. So you'll have to do at least 2 of these for sure to be able to complete all of the deeds in Act 3. And that gets you the Banner of Bone and Blade, which, as far as I know, is something that you can get for your captaincy ship. Now, complete all of these, and you're going to be able to get the ultimate reward, which is a little plaque that has the smuggler's icon on it that you can then use for your captain's ship. I think this is fine. I think that they've done a decent job of making this easy and complete, or be able to be completed. It says that season 17 is actually done in 4 weeks. So you've got this last month to be able to do it, and to be able to check your progress. Speaking of progress, season 17 is almost done. So you might want to get in there and actually do some more Sea of Thieves. And if you haven't completed this is the last month that you'll have to be able to get your seasonal renown finished up. And funny enough, in past seasons where I've had a pretty good time enjoying the content, getting 100 has not been an issue. I have not played as much as I was hoping I would, as much as I expected I would, just with everything going on, but just generally because the content has not really been something that I'm really excited about. So I am, I think on my last 5 levels for seasonal renown, which is surprising for me because that usually doesn't happen. I usually have mine done in the first month or two. So getting into the last month with 5 levels left, it's like, okay, not much. I just have to actually sit down and play Sea of Thieves. The Reaper's Fortresses are actually a good way of doing that. So the Reaper's Fortresses are brand new. We are basically kind of refreshing the experience at Skeleton Forts to try and introduce traps as a way to kind of let people know like what's going on with Sea of Thieves as far as like the new things that they've added as a result of Tall Tales, because not everyone's going to go do the Tall Tales. Not everyone understands how to do the Tall Tales or even how to get those started. So introducing things like the traps beyond a couple islands here and there is a good way to try and build out that game knowledge, which if you know me from any of the amount of time that I've been making content, you know that game knowledge is a very sacred thing for me. Having it be something that players can pick up and understand on their own intuitively through the game is something that I truly appreciate when Rare does, because so much of this is intuitive. Like so much of this stuff in the game, you know, you need to get water out of your ship. How do you get water out of your ship? Well, they give you a bucket. You bucket it and you take it and you throw the water overboard. That kind of stuff is always like learned knowledge that there's I can't remember quite what the word is for it. There's a very special word that kind of like allows you to learn by understanding the fact that you're using items that you would use in regular day-to-day life. So I'm always kind of interested when it comes to that kind of learning aspect of this. So the traps, if you see a lever, you pull the lever, one of your friends dies, and you quickly learn fire bad or good, depending on the friend. But for all intents and purposes, fire bad. But that lever, you now know, that is lever of fire. If you want burn skelly, you pull lever of fire. Hopefully not with your friends right there, unless you want to, in which case pull lever. But I like what they're doing. I like that they are refreshing this. It's exactly the type of thing that I think Sea of Thieves needs outside of the balance that is necessary when it comes to loot and the amount of gold earned by different items. I think that the Reaper's Fortresses have been exceptionally well received. I think a lot of folks are happy to be able to get into Sea of Thieves and have some fun with this. I think the fact that there are multiple ways to kind of approach this. I myself have not been able to play the game. I received a review code from Xbox last week, and it's for The Outer Worlds 2. And I'm doing a review for Xbox Expansion Pass because Luke and I have been pretty busy lately. But for all intents and purposes, I have been dedicating most of my free time to working on that review. So I really haven't been playing the game like at all. In fact, I haven't been playing any game outside of this really at all. So getting an opportunity to jump in and check out like what's going on with Sea of Thieves, to be able to see how the forts are, see how you know what to expect. I've done them on the Insiders, but you're never quite sure like how that's going to play out when you actually get into the game and you actually see like what's going on. So I was happy to see that it is, for all intents and purposes, exactly what I was hoping for, which is great. I'm really happy about that. Now, when you actually take a look at the Reaper forts, how can you identify them? Well, it's going to be super easy. You take a look at the sky, and if you see one that has little Minnie Mouse's bow on top of its head, you know that that is a new fortress or a Disney fort. We'll call them a Disney fort. I'll call them a Disney fort. Most people probably won't call them a Disney fort, but I'll call them a Disney fort. But you know, they have a hat on top of the Reaper's skull in the sky, and it does actually have the chest of fortune in them. And one of the nice things I think is actually really kind of cool is that because this is the introductory period for this, Rare has done what they've done with a couple other things where they tend to spike the intensity of what the spawn rate is, as well as the potential loot for those. So what is normally like just one chest of fortune, an Athena chest, and an assortment of pretty good loot for stuff that you probably have been working on little by little, but really just stuff that I think has kind of been left to the wayside. I think it's great that Rare has done this. I think that this is a great way to catch up on commendations that people who have not been playing the game or focused on these things in the past have been able to use as a catch-up mechanic. But the mega bundles, or the mega stashes, I guess would be, actually, let me take a quick look at the actual show notes here, because, or not the show notes, the actual, what do they call them? Patch notes. They called it a oh, this is gameplay. That's why I'm looking in the wrong section here. So with the Reaper Fortresses, they called it a boosted mega stash. So the mega stash will contain 3 chests of fortune, which is fantastic. I think they've done a really, really good job with incentivizing players to be able to go after these. In the 2 that I did for B-roll for this episode, I actually went out with some friends, and we managed to come across 2 Reaper's Fortresses, both ones that we dove to. And I was really, really happy because the people that were there working on it were very kind to give up the treasure for us. And in one of them, I was actually very surprised because the sloop we came in on the first one, they were pretty down to give us all the loot. They saw us coming and they're like, oh, you know what? I bet he's recording. Let's just go ahead and not fight back. So they just handed over the loot after they finished it up, right as they finished it up. And I thought that was really kind of them. The second one that we dove to after we did a vault or voyage of luck, thanks to the Twitch drops that are going on presently, was a 3 crew alliance at a Reaper Fortress, which I haven't seen a 3 ship alliance in quite a while, let alone one that is like, we're going to go do a Reaper Fortress, where it's probably one of the most contested things in the game right now. Like, that's, to me, cracks me up. But our galleon went in and we had a heck of a time kind of chasing cats in the backyard, wondering how are we going. It was kind of like, I'm trying to think of like a good way to do it. We would get one kind of like limping, like we had the leg of one of them, and something would happen. Another one would come over and like jump off our head, and we would let go of that one, and we'd go after the one that jumped on our head, and then we'd chase that one for a little while. Well, eventually 2 of the cats decided to jump the fence, and the other one we ended up getting. So out of all 3 ships, it was 2 sloops and a galleon. It was very funny to go into it with the expectation that it was going to be a hard fought fortress. It turns out you just had to chase them around for a while, and they scattered like rats on a sinking ship. So I had to actually go onto safer seas to go, and I was actually looking for one of the last chapters of a journal that I need, because I've just had terrible luck and haven't played enough to really find it. And I still haven't found it. That's the worst part, is I've been running around from island to island looking for this stupid book, and I can't seem to find the right chapter. And of course, Rare's commendations don't indicate which chapter you actually have read. So I don't actually know. I'm assuming it's the first chapter at this point, because I've found at least one chapter 2. So I'm a little like, what the heck, Rare, this is killing me. But we ended up, I don't even remember how I got on that, but I ended up having to do one on safer seas, because I was like, I want to actually like go through the process and just make sure that what I experienced on Insiders is the same. And sure enough, it is. It was exactly what I was expecting. So the good news is that what you can expect are multiple waves of skeletons. In between certain waves, you're going to run into the Dark Brethren making an appearance, which is kind of fun because it kind of changes things up. And honestly, when you are working through the different waves of skeletons, you kind of know what to expect. But for all intents and purposes, you're getting the same experience. It's just wave after wave after wave. And once you're done, that's pretty much it. You take out some captains, you take out the skeleton lord, and you loot the actual ship. Nothing too fancy there. The Dark Brethren coming in with the ghosts, which I'm not sure why they're ghosts. We'll leave that up to, Rare not wanting to have humans running around attacking you. They have to be skeletons or they have to be spirits of some nature, and those are the only two options that you get. But with the Dark Brethren showing up on the actual fortress, it actually draws the attention of the skeletons as well. And I actually really think that's cool. I think it's really fun that they gave us that as a caveat to the normal experience. And it's a good thing too, because if it weren't for the ghosts fighting the skeletons, you might not have as much opportunity to get on one of the cannons on the fortress to take out the 3 ships that are going to be circling the fortress, firing not only at your ship and you, but these skeletons and the fort as well. So I've been very happy for all intents and purposes with the overall design. I think they've done a fantastic job with it. I really appreciate the fact that the that the Dark Brethren are making an appearance back, because I think it's something that we haven't really seen too much of. And I'll get into that a little bit in the later part of this episode, but I don't want things spoiled because a lot of people have no clue what's going on or why there's commendations for things they don't understand. And I'll give you a little bit of an idea of what's going on with that. But for all intents and purposes, just know that Rare is getting back to their sneakiness. And I appreciate that as someone who enjoyed when they started to do more stuff like this. So for all intents and purposes, the fortress itself is pretty straightforward. Like, there's nothing too major that you need to worry about except for these man of arms. So the skull of arms, which is the kind of master at arms, if you want to pull from the actual lore of, like, ships, or not lore, but the terminology of lore. The master of arms was the ones that was in charge of kind of what weapons were stowed on a ship, which is odd because I could have swore that was actually the quartermaster, but what do I know at this point? But I was interested to see that they are bringing this in because it expands the current expectations of what you're going to find on a Reaper Fortress or a Skull Fort in general. And I really like that. I like that they have put in a what is it? The Siren Skull, which you do have to kill. I believe it's phantoms with. I should probably actually double check on this one. You have to kill skeletons with the Skull of Siren Sorrow, at least 20 of them while it's active. And you have to kill phantoms with the Obsidian Ashen Winds Skull during active Fortress. And one of the things that originally, back in the day, if Rare had done this, it would have been like, hey, go find one and then take it to a fort and then do the fortress. Here you're going to have to wait till the Skull of Arms appears. You kill them and then you take the skull. I think it is Master of Arms. I think that he is actually called a Master of Arms. I've only ever gotten to see the one on live servers. So I'm banking on the fact that that's what they are. But you kill the Master at Arms, you take his skull, you stick it on the skeleton that is pointing to the cache, and then the cache will open, and then you can use the tridents. There's a cannon of rage in there. You've got a black powder keg, which you'll need to use if you want to get the deed knocked out. Otherwise, you can use it to sink other crews, as well as the 2 skulls. And overall, I actually think that Rare has done a really good job of thinking through the process of their commendations when building the fortress. Like, they knew that they wanted to have this weapons cache, and this weapons cache was going to introduce elements of the game, tools in the game, at a fortress that most people probably wouldn't have on their ship. Like, most people probably aren't carrying around black powder kegs. So I like the fact that they have brought in this tool as a way to kind of like say, like, hey, we built in commendations. You have to get them done. You're going to wonder how to get them done. But as soon as you realize that these weapon caches can be opened up with the Skull of Arms, and you figure out how to open it up, you're going to find that all the tools that you need are actually there on the fort with you. So it's very smart. The other aspect of this is the fact that you actually need to sell Skulls of Arms. Now, this is a catchy thing because one of the deeds in the actual season that I commented on was that you needed to sell these to the smugglers, but you don't have to sell them to smugglers as far as I know. You just have to sell them for the commendations. But if you use them to open up the weapon caches, then you aren't going to have one. So you have to pick and choose. You have to decide, am I going to hold on to the skull? And am I going to use that as a turn-in? Or am I going to open up the weapon cache and work on those commendations there? Because I'm going to have to pick one or the other. Because the fort has to be active for you to get credit for these commendations. And one of the interesting things here is looking at the actual commendation for this. You have to unlock weapon caches during an active Reaper's Fortress. The active part is key here. You can't do it afterwards. And one thing that I've been hearing is that only people who are captains on a captain ship are getting credit for them. Now, one thing that I want to stress here is that is probably not the intended design. The intended design is most likely either crew-based or individual-based. Rare, as far as I know, has not done anything as just in cruel as having a captain ship that can have multiple people on it and only giving credit to the person who's actually the captain, as far as I know. And I think that they would have written that in the actual commendation, as much as I know that they don't actually instruct you too much when it comes to the commendations. A lot of those you just have to figure out or see if science it. For all intents and purposes, I don't believe this to be the design of the actual commendation. So if you have an opportunity to try this out, do try and keep an eye on if you get credit or if you don't get credit. Just make sure that you're doing it while it's actually on an active fortress. Don't hold on to the skull and think I'm going to open this when everything's all said and done, so there's less risk to me. The intent here from Rare is that you're opening up a host of tools that can be used against you or for you during the actual fortress, which is most likely going to be contested. So that's kind of the interesting thing that I've found so far with the Reaper Fortress itself, and of course the actual commendations designed around it. Now, as far as the loot goes, I've actually been very impressed with the loot. I think the loot pool does exactly what I think a new fortress or a new event should do. It should take a look at the past and address gaps in the loot table, where things that we used to be able to have access to on a very easy way are no longer made available. And one of the greatest things that they've decided to do is actually in high seas, they've decided to put the gifts, the bountiful and humble, or no, generous. I think it's generous. The generous gifts and the humble gifts are in the actual Reaper fortresses, and not just one or two, but 5, 6, 7, multiple of these. And in fact, it's so easy that a lot of folks have been able to get some of the commendations for themselves that they haven't been able to do in a while done within 3 to 4 fortresses. Now, granted, some of the ones where you're going to have to actually have other people turn them in, that in itself is going to be a little more difficult. You're going to need to open up a fortress or have a fortress open and gain access to the gifts and then touch them all. So just go with the understanding that you will have to probably turn in some gifts yourself, but you can always leave the gifts after touching them to be able to allow someone to come and find them. Or you can take them with you and then drop them off at Reapers and then just hang out on the server for a while. Or get sunk. That's always a good way to go about it as well too. Have some loot on your ship and then allow someone to come and actually sink you. So I would say whatever you think works best for you, definitely go that route. But just know that there's a lot of ways to kind of earn treasure or earn commendation progress right now that you normally would have had a very, very hard time doing. And I think at the end of the day, that is what's actually going to make this fortress something that people appreciate and remember over time. And at the end of it, I think that's the trouble with, I think, a lot of season 17 is that much of this is going to go kind of forgotten. I think the black powder kegs are going to be remembered, but everything else outside of the experiences that they had, the stories that they tell with the Reaper's Fortresses, are going to be the takeaways from this season. And this may be a fairly light season because they've shifted their way of kind of approaching the season with their acts. But the acts are doing what adventures were, which is giving you a 3-part structure to a story or to a series of events throughout the season. They've given you something that's kind of lighter. Then they've given you a new tool. And then they give you a refresh on something older that is bringing it back into the limelight. And there's only so much of that they're really going to be able to do before they have to just start bringing in brand new stuff to the game that no one's ever heard or seen of. But the fact that they've been able to refresh skeleton forts, which most people ignored, I would argue, is a really nice. It's fantastic to see. So one of the things that I wanted to get into was actually safer seas. And I talked about, going and actually doing one of these in safer seas, but overall, I wanted to address the fact that in safer seas, you can do all of the deeds, which is fantastic, but the safer seas Reaper Fortresses, which I was not expecting them to actually be in there, has quite a bit of loot in there. And a lot of folks might be kind of upset that, they're obviously like Reaper Fortresses and safer seas. It's going to make it easier for people to get chests of fortune. Well, the good news is that if that was your concern, you don't have anything to worry about. Much like before, chests of fortune are just in higher seas. So you may be wondering, okay, well, what are they actually putting in the fortresses for safer seas in that case? So after doing one, I'm very happy with the outcome because you can get kingly loot out of there. They have, crowns, they have wraithful skulls. You can get smuggler loot in there. They've got kegs, they've got flower crates, they've got paintings. You can also get Hunter's Call loot in there, which is grizzly and pristine boar tusks, megalodon teeth, scales. All of those are in there, as well as a bunch of gems, treasure chests, and then kind of the normal assortment of loot that you would expect out of there. So stronghold chest, stronghold skulls, ancient bone dust, captain's chests, things like that. And I like this because for me, I look at Safer Seas as a learning tool. It's something that players can go and learn how to do some of the stuff in the game that would maybe take newer players more time to work out. And having Safer Seas is an option. Now, obviously, they're going to be capped on levels. So turning in this stuff isn't going to increase their level gains anyway. They're going to be stuck at 25. It will give them gold, which will make it easier for them to get captainships for when they do come to high seas. But I like that this is kind of a way for folks that may not have the time or desire to go after certain types of treasure. With smugglers being the main focus in this season, a lot of the loot that is left in shipwrecks is no longer the kingly stuff. A lot of it is just smuggler stuff. Not to say that that's the case all across the board, but I've seen a lot more smuggler stuff in shipwrecks lately during the season than I have anything else. So for me, I like the fact that Safer Seas is offering that in these Reaper Fortresses. Likewise, the way to get pristine megalodon scales and chests is still a little nebulous in my mind. Like, you can kill a megalodon, but that's not a guarantee that you're going to get a scale or teeth from them. It's also not going to guarantee that you get those when you go and fight a regular kraken. And the megalodon voyage for Hunter's Call, I believe, does have like a chance at some of those, but the pristine stuff, as far as I know, has to be emergent in the world. So it's one of those situations where I look at what's going on with the forts, and I'm like, okay, I feel like Rare has done a pretty good job of utilizing the new loot tables for both high seas and safer seas. With high seas, you obviously have just the stuff that you would expect to get out of the high seas, with the Reaper treasure, with the Athena loot, with the gifts, and it's a lot nicer in the chests of fortune. So high seas really does cater to the high seas people, the people that are looking to get those levels in those factions with that type of loot, especially for like the recent season 16 Reaper items. You know, there's stuff in there that you have to get from voyages that if you're a Reaper and don't feel like going to do voyages because you're a Reaper, fighting over a fort on high seas is a lot more interesting to get that treasure. And it still counts. Now, obviously you need to go do the actual voyage still if you're trying to get Reaper voyages done. But if you're just looking to get the actual turn-ins for the treasure, and you want to be able to do that in a way that still caters to the essence of what Reaper is, which is, you know, Pirates for All Eternity, and you want to actually go and attack someone for that stuff, then the new Reaper fortresses are a fantastic way to approach that. Not only are you getting your chests of fortune, you're getting Athena loot, which is in line with the lore, but you're also retrieving the Order of Bone and Blade items, the Reaper chests and the Reaper urns for Flameheart at these fortresses. And it's really well thought out. I thought that this was one of the opportunities that I saw where I was like, this makes sense. This was well thought out. And because of that, I have to say that the Reaper fortresses are really, really well done. But going back to Safer Seas gives you an idea of what the Reaper's fortress is going to be like. It's just not taking into account what the pool of loot is going to be, or that these are going to be highly contested. So you're going to understand the mechanics, you're going to understand the flow, which if you look at many other games out there that are PvP focused games, it really does matter when you're playing Call of Duty, when you're playing Fortnite, when you're playing, let's go with Overwatch, when you're playing a MOBA or something like that. Understanding the map, the different tools at your, you know, at play, like the types of weapons that you have, knowing the corners or the angles, knowing abilities, timings on different things, how many waves there are. All of that is very important at a fundamental level, because you're building that muscle memory that you don't necessarily get to understand or process when you're dealing with multiple crews, or you might just miss out on that content because other people are already doing it. Like I said, I went into high seas in a galleon. I did 2 Reaper fortresses. I didn't touch either of those. I didn't experience either of those. What I did experience was fighting other crews and then taking the loot from them. Arguably one of the easier ways to kind of go about actually doing fortresses, but it didn't teach me how to actually do them. And had I not had the experience in Insiders, I'd be pretty lost. And that's where Safer Seas came in handy, because I went and actually completed an entire one on my own. I got to experience it. I got to see what happened. I knew what to expect. And I really appreciated that as a teaching tool for me to be able to speak on my experience, so that if somebody asks me like, okay, well, do you have Ashen Guardians and Ashen Keymasters in the Reaper fortresses? Yes, you do. And they still drop voyages for you. Well, what about the Skull of Arms? What's that like? Well, it comes in pretty later in the actual fort, but it still should be enough for you to get these skulls to get some of the kills that you need for the commendations. So definitely keep an eye out for him and try to get that cache opened as soon as you can. Okay, well, what about the end boss? Well, you're looking at a Skeleton Lord, so it's going to be pretty par for the course. There's going to be a knockback. He'll summon, or they'll summon different types of skeletons as they kind of go about. But for the most part, you know, it's going to be sword, pistol, blunderbuss as the normal amount of weaponry that you can expect from a Skeleton Lord. But having Safer Seas offer loot that is still relatively, like, you know, desired, because I don't know about you, but I'm still working on my kingly stuff. Wrathful stuff, totally good on that. Kingly, that's something I'm still hunting for. That's something, for whatever reason, the kingly loot has still been a little more difficult to actually get. So I am at like 638 right now, it looks like, out of 1,000. So I still have a good 372 or 62 pieces that I need to find. And to be perfectly honest, the reputation would be nice, but it's not a game breaker for me. Like if I can't get the gold hoarder rep, it's okay. I'll live. I'll live for, I'll get it somewhere else, and it'll probably be faster if I get it somewhere else. So it's not too big of a concern. But the Kingly treasure itself is not exactly an easy thing to go hunting around for, especially with the skeleton captains being fairly sparse lately for whatever reason. So I appreciate that the Reaper Forts offer that. Then you get into the whole fact that the Hunter's Call loot is actually offering scales at a Reaper Fortress. Well, that's fantastic. That's awesome. Who wouldn't want to get some of those scales and teeth knocked out with a flippin' skeleton fort? Learning how to do one of those skeleton forts gives you an opportunity to kind of figure out like, okay, well, how do these work? And then you find out those are part of the loot table, and you're like, that's compelling. That's compelling in a way that I didn't expect it. So toss into that just the fact that you actually have to actually go and get the completions done. The fact that there's completions that you need to work on as well too. Well, if you're strapped for time and you don't have anyone on, and you don't feel like soloing a fort that's going to be contested, then maybe the best way to go about it is jump into Safer Seas. Maybe that would be, a good way to kind of like take care of some of the issues that you have with getting the completions done. Not saying that it's necessary, and not saying that it's going to be for everyone or that everyone should do it this way. But I like that it's an option, and I'm always going to champion options, because I think at the end of the day, if we start running into situations like this current bug with the captains of ships only being able to get credit for the weapon cache openings, then that's a mentality around game design that I just don't believe is intended, and I would hate to see that that's the way that Rare would want to take it. So I'll be keeping an eye out to see if that's something that it gets reported and actually like addressed in future updates, because I don't know that that's the way that should go about happening. So for all intents and purposes, again, Safer Seas, kind of an interesting way to go about actually doing the new content. I did not anticipate that being a way for me to sit there and think like, maybe I could do a couple of these in Safer Seas. Wouldn't kill me. Next on today's docket, let's talk a lottie about something that's coming in the game now. If you don't know, if you haven't gotten these done, you might want to go out and actually get your Smugglers League commendations knocked out. Not just because there's deeds to get them done, but because there's a super secret thing that you can do once you have those done. And the way to kind of get this kicked off is there's a commendation that just came with the update, part of the Adventures at Sea in the Smuggler's Tide section. One of those is how you kind of have to get this kicked off, and that is the legendary commendation for Super Smuggler. Complete all of the Smuggler League's commendations. Now that doesn't include the Reaper stuff as far as I know, so you can do this without having to do any of the new stuff. You just have to have that Super Smuggler one done. Then you need to go to Lottie, who's over at Crescent Isle, by the way. Crescent Isle's where you go talk to her. Talk to her, and she will give you a request or something to do, effectively. And I'll leave it at that. If you're super curious and you don't mind spoilers, what I will say is that Rare Thief, shout out to Amir over there. He went out and they made a really good video for how to do this, and kind of gives you a breakdown of like what's going on. And what I will say is that you will get to experience something if you get this all done that will probably bring a lot of folks who are into the lore of Sea of Thieves, into the story of Sea of Thieves, a lot of joy, because I think that they're going to be coming back to this in a way that we'll experience with season 18, and in a way that they actually managed to keep out of insiders, which again, I've been talking about this for quite a while. In fact, I think I've probably been talking about this basically since the beginning of Insiders and why the NDA was not essential. Because this was something that was kept out of Insiders, and it was a good spoiler. It was something that was better played when people actually got into the game and actually figured it out. But they managed to keep it secret. They managed to keep it locked down. They didn't have it exposed or kind of tossed out there in the world in Insiders before it got to live service. So people didn't know about it until they actually got into the live servers. And that's how it should be. You should be able to test out commendations, mechanics, things that are going on in the game without having to be spoiled for the story in Insiders. And that's a very difficult thing for studios to have to try and work out, but it is possible. And this is proof. So kudos to the team for keeping this secret. Kudos to them for being able to test the game. And for all intents and purposes, there are bugs in this update. There are things that are going on that are like, well, it didn't take too long, but we did get the "we're aware" post on SOT's support handle on X and Blue Sky. So, you know, obviously not without its bugs. Commendations, certain commendations are not currently tracking properly. Certain things are not giving credit where they need to give credit. So still some bugs, not terrible, but ones that you want to be aware of. So I will say, just as a heads up as well too, the one that they were talking about actually is part of the Reaper's Fortress commendations for the completion of those. I believe it is the rewards for the Masked Brethren or the Brethren's Masquerade ship set. Those have been made available through the shipwright in error. You can see that you can buy them, but when you try to buy them, they show is that they can't be purchased. So that was something where people were able to get them without actually completing the commendations for it. So they had to remove those and then take the items, disconnect the items from the actual shipwright, because people wanted to just buy them without actually earning them. So they are working on a fix, as they confirmed that the Wrecker of Reaper Fortresses commendation is not tracking properly. So just be aware of that. But I did appreciate the fact that they tried to do, they tried to address this as best they could. And that kind of takes me to one of the other things that I wanted to talk about as well too. So last week I broke down the Festival of the Damned mega bundle, which is the 9,999 ancient coin bundle that has 136 items in it. Now a lot of these are discounted. I have not had time to be able to go and verify what items were discounted in Insiders versus which ones were discounted in live. What I will say is, as much as I appreciate them doing this and that it is still a good deal, this was something that I talked about last episode, and I'm going to talk about it again because I was actually watching Fuzzy Bond for my Twitch drops on Friday, because Twitch drops are live. As a reminder, you can actually get those, and I would recommend making sure that you do, so that you get your coin, you get your renown, you get your Voyage of Luck, you get your mystical divination emote, you get a skeleton raid voyage or skeleton fort raid voyage, which I haven't done. You also get the Eastern Winds Ruby Eye of Reach, you get the Amethyst Mercenary Pegleg, and you get the Mandrake pistol. So for 6 hours of your time, between when you're listening to this and the 24th of October, you will be able to earn these 8 things. So just a reminder, go get your Twitch drops on this. But while I was watching Fuzzy, and shout out to Twitch for really just borking the whole viewer system, because for whatever reason, only 2 tabs count for views, and only 1 tab counts at a time for drops. So while watching multiple streamers, I'm not trying to get drops for Sea of Thieves from multiple streamers at the same time, but I did like actually being able to get multiple drops from different games on different tabs at the same time. And that is no longer the case. So thanks, Twitch, for really just that up for me. You son of a... I really hated that change. So glad that that's a thing that I have to deal with now. But at the end of the day, I was watching Fuzzy, and Fuzzy was bringing up a point and showcasing the point that I was making last week. And I felt so vindicated. I was like, yes, I'm not the only one that sees this. I'm so glad. I am so pissed off that this is even a thing. But the way he phrased it was a way that I think was something that maybe needs to get addressed, because he made the point that when they were giving away free ancient coin in I believe it was Maiden's Voyage, there was a way that you could get free ancient coin, and he had mentioned, and I don't remember this, so I'm going off of secondhand knowledge on this one, but he mentioned how Rare over the weekend figured out how to get a patch for it to fix it, because people were just getting free ancient coin. Like they were creating characters and deleting characters and getting free ancient coin that way. But the point that I'm trying to make is that right now, Rare is not addressing an issue with the Pirate Emporium that is potentially stealing money from people in a very adverse way. So, and the best way I can describe this is something that I addressed last weekend, where I was talking about how bundles aren't discounted with by the value of items you've already purchased. And that stays true to this day, and was what Fuzzy was talking about. If you buy, so I'll take the Jackal-Looter big bundle as a good example here, because I have most of the Jackal-Looter stuff. I have all of the weapons, I have the costume, I have the ship set. I don't have the flare because honestly, flares, they can go. So, but I have all of that stuff. I have one of the emote sets, but there's 2 in the big bundle. Now, if I were to have all of these except for the flares would only cost 199 ancient coin to buy a piece of, but I wouldn't do that. But that doesn't reflect on the bundle. If I just clicked on the big bundle, it would buy everything in that bundle for 4,999 ancient coin, $50. It's like $50 worth of content there, where I've spent most of my ancient coin to buy most of it. And if all I had left was a $2 flare that I'm not going to buy because it's a piece of, then I would be spending $50 for a $2 piece of. So it's one of those situations that Rare will be very protective when it comes to giving away ancient coin. They don't want to give away ancient coin, but they are negligent when it comes to the Emporium by not discounting the bundle. You can spend 4,999 ancient coin on a bundle when all you can buy out of that you don't own is 199 ancient coin worth of content in that bundle. That is gross negligence when it comes to taking people's actual money. And I think that is something that Fuzzy said very well and demonstrated very well, because he was buying stuff and showing that even if you buy everything except for one thing, you can still click on the big bundle thing and lose hundreds of ancient coin because you didn't expect or understand that you were not buying just the one item that you needed left out of this bundle. You just thought, I buy the big bundle, it's going to clear out the stuff that I don't have in there, and it should be discounted based on the stuff that I've already got purchased, but it doesn't. And that is something that, to be perfectly honest, that's kind of in the lawsuit territory. That's kind of in the this is like why people didn't like loot boxes, because you were buying stuff that you didn't understand what the probability of the value of it was. Well, in this case, you're buying stuff that you've already purchased and they're not telling you that that's what's happening. And that's kind of like, I don't know if they should be doing that. I think that's something like they need to figure out real quick how to get the bundles to reflect the actual value remaining out of a bundle before you start charging people twice for cosmetics that they already own because they clicked on a button that is there. it's up to people to be smart enough to do that, but it's also responsibility of the company to not shyster their consumers, right? Like, be a good steward when it comes to your store. Don't charge people twice for something that they already own. All right, what else do I want? Let's see. Looking at the docket here. Oh, Outpost Cosmetics. So this was something I know we talked about in the past, but just a reminder. Not only do you have a free emote in the Emporium, by the way, see no evil. Go pick that up. Make sure you get your free emote. Is it weird? I want emotes in the stores. It's like, why isn't I know we go to emotes in the Emporium, but that's where they live, and it's kind of weird how they've segregated some of that stuff. But anyway, so Outposts, what can you buy? Well, if you go to the shipwright, you can actually check out the Orange Resolute hull, sails, and flag. I bought these and subsequently parked them in the shipwright. And I was like, thank you for having these available. I will now hold on to them in the event that I ever need to have that kind of a ship color for God knows what reason. Maybe I'm blending into the sunset. You've also got the Weaponsmith. Now has the Lucky Rover set, which is the pistol, the cutlass, the blunderbuss, the Eye of Reach, the heavy sword, and the rapier. 3 swords, 3 guns, all in the Lucky Rover set. This is on par with the other sets that they have released, which actually I'm trying to see what else did we get as well recently that was part of that set. We had, was it the Azure Scout? Yes. Yeah, we had the Azure Scout. We had the Golden Chaser Cutlass. Then we have the Lucky Rover stuff, which I think that's effectively it as far as that stuff goes. I don't think we have had any of the other sets. I'm looking through. Oh, no. We had the Flaming Jackal as well. Was there any other ones? I'm looking through my stash right now just to kind of see if there was anything in particular that I'm missing, but I feel like I've got all of the other stuff. Okay, so I think I'm fairly safe to say that those are the only ones. So the Flaming Jackal, the Azure Scout, the Golden Chaser, and the Lucky Rover. So what is that for? So we just need the Good Boy set, I think. Is that the only ones that we need at this point? But those are available in there. So definitely make sure that you head over to the Outposts and take a look at their stock. It's not a lot. So hopefully, not too much of a trouble to go pick up, but good that they've updated it and provided something at least. I'm running around trying to find my last book of the moment. Outside of that, there's the pocket emotes, pocket bat emotes, I guess would actually be the right way to actually tell you what the news is. Those are in the Emporium. They've also got the expanded set for the Silver Sepulchre set, the Jackal Looter stuff, the Crimson Crypt Cabin, which I bought because I love vampires, I guess. That's not the Twilight ones. Stop thinking that. That's rude. But I love, that spooky stuff. You've also got the Skeleton Toucan and the Alter Ego set, which I still think the Alter Ego set was one of the more interesting ones that they've provided in a while. Some of the stuff that they have improved, retrieving items from skeletons. Players can now retrieve items being held by allied skeletons more easily. Hitting the skeleton anywhere with a grapple gun or harpoon will retrieve the item, even if the skeleton is facing away from the player. I appreciate that because you have no control over them. And as much as you yell at them, it's still about as effective as you playing with Rust Belt Kit. Performance improvements. This update includes a system level optimization to CPU performance across the whole experience to reduce the frequency of frame rate drops and provide a smoother frame rate during gameplay. Personally, game's been playing fine for me. I'm also on a decent system. So for me, I haven't really experienced too many weird issues. I know latency has been a question as of late. I think the unstable connection has been something that has been a little weird. But it's not the end of the day if that happens. They've also done further optimizations to ensure that the way treasure items floating in water are managed to help try and improve performance on the servers. Super vague, guys. I think we could maybe like say, hey, it's going to last 15 minutes, or hey, this stuff is going to float a little bit longer, but it's not going to bounce wildly when you try to like, harpoon it. A little more detail on that, I think, would be great. I feel like we got the AI explanation of whatever the heck that was that they put on here. The other thing that I wanted to touch on in the patch notes here is the second chance policy. So for those not familiar, Rare has been very adamant that they want to offer this second opportunity for their enforcement policy. They've recently changed it to more of a point system, much like it's akin to the Microsoft point system for reporting players. So points accrue and you have an opportunity to have those points fall off as time goes on, and you don't have any actual reports against you. But what they did was they decided to give players who had been toxic in the past and been reported a chance to come back to the game and actually get to jump back in with the second opportunity to actually do that. And I was watching a chick as she was streaming, and someone actually came into her chat and said that they hadn't been playing the game for the last 4 years because 4 years ago they had been banned due to toxicity, which she commented, hopefully, you've learned your lesson. And they said that they had. So it would be interesting to find out, like how many people had been given the opportunity to come back. Now, I do think that this didn't apply to everyone. And I saw some hot takes out there saying that they should just open it up to anyone that had been banned, which I think that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, to be perfectly honest. Sure, one person has an opportunity at a second chance at life. Let's just open it up to all the people in prison. So it's nice that they're getting this opportunity. I'm genuinely hoping that the folks that lost their access to Sea of Thieves back in the day are coming back and taking this as an opportunity to be like, okay, I know I screwed up in the past, 3 strikes and I was out. I didn't respect that. Now I can actually time has passed. I've probably grown as a person, hopefully, and have a second chance to actually come and enjoy the game, which is awesome. Be a better person and enjoy the game. Don't end up, putting yourself in the doghouse again for what, because you got a mouth. Just don't even worry about it. You don't have to be toxic. You can still prove that you're good by sinking players the old fashioned way and not have to resort to being mean about it. Right. We're all just at the end of the day, not working and enjoying our free time on Sea of Thieves. That's the goal right there. Enjoy your time on Sea of Thieves and don't be a jerk. Or if you're a fan of Will Wheaton from Star Trek days, don't be a so what else have we got here? I want to take a look at some of this other stuff. There have been some gameplay fixes that they talked about a little bit. They did talk about some of this in the past as well too. But they have made it so that Xbox players should no longer experience underwater visual issues when swimming, and that should now consistently see the correct visual effects before both above and below the waves. Improvements have been made to display the captain's ship's name on the ship crest, the captain's logbook and banners after a crew migrates after servers. Let's see. Players should no longer be able to throw a blunder bomb or other throwables instantly after firing a ranged weapon. This was something that I seen happen, and I was like, how is this not breaking something? How is this not an exploit? And sure enough, it was an exploit. People were actually using the throwable. It was like an animation cancel. They were able to fire an Eye of Reach and then immediately throw a blunder bomb and kill people, and it was a little gross. Throwables such as blunder bombs targeting the rear hull of a galleon will now consistently impact the hull surface and not pass through certain areas to land inside the ship. Not something I ran into, but boy howdy am I glad that that's not something I ran into. Ships diving beneath the waves with skeletons on board will now cause them to gracefully be destroyed. Skeleton lords no longer take knockback or become stunned when hit with Ashen Wind's skulls, or Obsidian Ashen Wind skulls, or the Horn of Fair Winds, which is really interesting. So if you've never tried this, give it a shot because it's kind of funny looking. Use a Horn of Fair Winds against regular skeletons, and it's like you've sword lunged them. They get knocked back, and this was something that was being able to be used against skeleton lords. Skeleton lords, for all intents and purposes, are labeled as a boss, and probably should not succumb to the knockback or stun effect of a Horn of Fair Winds or Ashen Wind skull. I think that's fair. I think that's fair in the same way that I think that being able to shove skeletons around with a Horn of Fair Winds is fair, because they're made up of, bones. There's no mass there. Cannons of Rage now always sets sloops on fire when it explodes, which is nice. I don't know how that managed to not be a thing, but I'm glad that that's no longer an issue. There was one other one here that I was... Oh, yes. Yeah. This is the one. Well, actually, there's two technically. Deploying a Cannon of Rage on burning deck will now cause it to begin overheating. Good. It's taking damage. It should. Also, jumping while retracting a Cannon of Rage now interrupts the action. Also good. Probably not something you should be able to do. Stop bunny hopping. You're not in Fortnite. Although Fortnite's kind of fun right now. But don't buy the Tron Ares stuff. Actually, the Tron Ares stuff's out, so you don't have to worry about that. Don't support that movie. Gosh, I hate what they did. Moving too far away when reviving an allied order of Bone and Souls or Bone and Blade skeleton now interrupts the action, which is good because it was kind of weird. It was like you could kind of start it and then move back and you'd lose the dialogue, and then you move forward, he'd still be rezzing. You're like, that's kind of weird. Okay, I guess that's how that works. And then of course, treasure on board the Burning Blade will now be released after returning the ship to the captain. Smuggler's Tide. Players can now consistently unlock the captain of the Smuggler's Tide commendations when meeting the required criteria across both safer seas and higher seas, which is nice because, like I was talking about, there's a lot of stuff that happens at the Reaper's Fortresses. If you want to take advantage of that in safer seas, I'm not going to be like, no, the experience. My pearls. But I'm also going to say, it should also count both ways. If you're doing it, you're doing it. Whether it's contested, doesn't matter, because I've definitely been on ships where, you go into high seas and you do something, it's completely uncontested. And the only difference is that for whatever reason, nobody bugged you, but you still benefit. So see what else we got. The traps within smuggler hideouts now will now consistently trigger when the player trips on the pressure plates. I didn't think that was ever an issue. I always thought that I was actually just kind of good at, missing them. Apparently not. Apparently that's not actually how that works. So poop on that. Smuggler run paintings can now be found in the shipwright shop for eligible players to purchase. Which, if you don't know, there's actually little trinkets that you can buy once you complete all the smuggler stuff for the first two acts. Well, I guess the first act technically, but there's little trinkets that you can buy, little shippy ships, and those shippy ships you can then put on your boat or in places where you can use those little trinkets. So check out the shipwright for those little trinkets. You never know. Could be something that comes in handy, just having those. Let's see what else. Taking a look at the black powder barrels from voyages now consistently progress the treasure sold pirate milestone, which is wild that didn't take into case. And whoever found that, kudos to you for finding that. Oh, here was a good one. This one always bugged me. Guild members will no longer appear as anonymous on the list. So many times I'm looking at a guild and there's a ship sailing and it's got so-and-so and then anonymous. And I'm like, why is it saying anonymous? That doesn't make any sense. Like, they're guild members. They should be sailing in there unless they're just bringing in randos. But, if you're sailing on a captain ship, you should probably have a ledger showing like who's on your boat. Who are they? If I check that boat and I'm like, who be there? Yee. scurvy dog, it should say Rust Belt Kid. And I don't have to worry because they're probably not getting a whole lot done. No, I'm just, I don't know why I'm picking on Rust Belt Kid. There's no reason for it. So many other people I could be picking on. It was Witch a couple episodes ago. Now it's Rusty today. Let's see. Smugglers Tide as a known issue. The commendations and rewards. Known issues. Players may have found their Reaper Fortress commendation completion inaccurate reflected with today's update, making rewards such as the Brethren's Masquerade ships items available to purchase ahead of time. The ability to purchase or equip these items has temporarily been removed while the team works to reinstate the correct criteria. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot of other things going on. There are still some fixes and stuff that I didn't talk about in this. But they're kind of minor things that I generally don't think that I need to bother going through all of them because they're just like, they're good fixes. And if you didn't notice them, you probably wouldn't even notice that that was an issue to begin with. Whereas in other cases, some things are good to know about because you should probably find out about that kind of stuff going into it. What was there? There was something else that was going on. Oh, the Rare had a Rare update that came out that talked about some really awesome stuff. So there was a developer update that came out on October 15th. And actually, you know what? I just remembered Godhammer actually threw me a summary of that. So let me see if I can pull up his message since he grabbed that, and that'll actually save me some time tonight. All right. Shout out to Godhammer for summarizing the developer update video. I'll be digging in through the notes that he typed up to kind of see like how he did. And we'll kind of go from there. So basically, if you guys didn't know, there was a live stream that was actually really nice. I need to go back and watch it because there was a little bit of Sea of Thieves in there for season 18 that we haven't talked about yet. But because there was so much else going on with this season, I wanted to make sure to get the pertinent stuff about the Reaper Fortresses and the patch notes and stuff out there first. We can dive into all that season 18 stuff next week or the week after as we get closer to that. We still have 4 weeks of season 17, so we got time. And I don't think Mike's going to be coming out anytime soon to be dropping any bombshells that we can't talk about in a later episode as well, too. But what I will say is that the developer update that came out from Drew, which we're not going to address the hat. The hat is fine. There were some interesting things that got talked about, especially with a mode that they have not compromised on at all when it comes to stuff. And I think that this is probably a good thing because they're actually going back and addressing Hourglass. So let's start off with the very tippy top of what's going on. There have been some game health fixes that I talked about that they were doing with the blender bomb and throwing that after firing. There's been some enhancements to the audio delay. So there's a new audio tech that has been planned from the Sea of Thieves post that is being delayed in the insiders for testing. They have been working on the cheater update and that there's a bit more transparency that they've given for the cheating issues, and that some of the latest cheats have actually been squashed, and that they are currently working on other stuff as far as like making sure that they're figuring out how people are able to spawn and teleport into ship beds with a new detection method that they're using that actually delivers instant bans for cheaters using that, which is really nice. It's really fantastic that they were able to figure that out and actually get a hot fix out in the first 24 hours of that really kind of coming in. They've also identified the root cause of the eternal black screen. If you have slower like memory, I see this more with older computers that are still running on like slower SSDs or non NVMe SSDs. You can get stuck in kind of like an eternal black screen when returning from the ferry. And I've seen this on Xbox Ones. I've seen this on Xbox Series S's. It still happens on X, but I don't think it's as bad as like the S for whatever reason. But it is one of those things that like with older hardware, people were running into the eternal black screen. And they said that they were able to identify the root cause, and that there's an upcoming fix that should address the scenarios where you sit in the black screen for too long and you can kind of hear stuff happening. So glad to see that, because that's consistently been an issue with Sea of Thieves, is the eternal black screen, forever stuck in that loading time between the ferry and the getting on your ship. One of the other things that they talked about was the improvements to quick swap. So they've talked about this in the past, how they are going to be pulling the restrictions on the weapon swap, the delay between swapping from one weapon to the other. This is not just for double guns. This is for all weapons. So whether you're swapping between a knife or a grapple or a sword or eye of reach or a double barrel pistol, just kidding, nobody uses those. Those are all going to feel the same speed between all of the weapon switches. Sorry, I just found the last chronicle that I needed for my super smuggler stuff, so I'm actually very excited about that. Oh no, never mind, I didn't get the super smuggler thing. Ooh-wee. Okay, so apparently I need to go and do all of the commendations for the Smuggler's Tide. Fra. Well, it looks like I am going to be working on that at some point, but needless to say, the weapon swap, the quick swap, is going to be closer to the 1 second switch that a lot of people back in the day were very used to. But there's been a lot of folks that are like, I forgot how to do this. It's super fast. I need to redo my muscle memory. We're all going to be there. Don't worry about it. But that is something that's actually getting tested on insiders. And they would really appreciate it if those of you who don't mind going on insiders would jump in there, especially if you're an old school double gunner or just a current double gunner and want to test out to see how it feels. I really appreciate the fact that they've done that. It's one of those things where it did feel clunky to switch between guns. There was always that almost a half-second delay between the swaps that you weren't used to. And then reverting back to the original version of this across all of the weapons, I think will be a nice kind of even playing field, so that it's no longer who can animation sprint cancel or reload sprint cancel their animation so that they can quickly swap, compared to someone else who's not bothering to go through that rigmarole for the half second of increased time when it comes to being in a fight. I appreciate that, because if everyone expects the same speed and you can't shorten that in any fashion so everyone has the same swap speed and you can't cheat it in a way, then it levels the playing field between people and skill as well as inputs, like hardware inputs. Whether you're on controller, when you're on mouse and keyboard, some people can sprint loot, some people can't. That doesn't mean that everyone shouldn't be able to do something like that, but it does benefit when people can, because they can just get their loot from one point to another in a faster fashion. And that's because they can juggle the loot faster, because their input is quick enough, their latency is low enough, and they don't have an insane ping preventing them from being able to get the inputs in fast enough. That's kind of not quite the same thing now that I think about it. Not quite the same thing as a weapon swap, but at the bare minimum, having a set time frame between weapon swaps that feels like as fast as what people are animation canceling are doing, hopefully even the playing field and make it so that more and more people are able to kill as equitably as possible. The last thing that is going here, and bear in mind, going off of Godhammer's notes on here, so I'm trusting his ability to take notes as gospel. And if there's any corrections that need to get made, we can talk about that next episode. But the next thing is Hourglass, and they are changing Hourglass, or they're going to be changing Hourglass, because it hasn't changed since season 8 when it came out. It's ridiculous. So I'm really glad that they're doing this, because to be perfectly honest, the lack of budging on this has frustrated me to a level that actually caused me to have to call it out when I went to go to SOT Fest, and I actually got to see Andy Preston in person. And as much as I wanted to just, gush and praise and congratulate him on Hourglass and how great it's been, I had to share my frustrations with how difficult the mode was, how much it rails against the sense of what adventure PvP is, and how it doesn't feel as good as Hourglass, or how it doesn't feel as good as Arena, how I missed Arena, but also just that there were things that were tied behind a certain level. And as a lore fanatic, I was frustrated that I had to go and do stuff to engage with this content for the sake of lore. And that was not something that I enjoyed. And a lot of it just came down to the fact that Hourglass has not been touched. I mean, Captaincy also has not really been touched. They haven't really done too many improvements. They've offered rewards for it, much like they've increased the rewards available for Hourglass, but the mode itself has not had a refresh in quite a while, if at all, period. Like, I think they've added more spawn points, and that was the extent of it. But to their credit, they are going back and they're taking a look at this. So what are they doing? The mode integrity, by locking the mode behind certain gates, will help prevent bad actors like cheaters from being able to instantly access the mode from a brand new account. This will be their first area of focus. And I think the easiest way for them to go about this is to lock it behind Pirate Legend. Pirate Legend is not difficult to get if you're actively engaging in the game, but it should be a bare minimum to an extent to be able to get into that mode. I think that it's fair to say that getting into Hourglass to represent Athena's fortune, you should have a certain amount of reputation with them. I think 70 or I think 50 is a fair reputation when it comes to Athena. I think having 50 in 3 others to get Pirate Legend, not difficult in my mind, and very doable, and a good way to kind of help reduce the amount of people who are getting into Hourglass without really having to do much to it, which means that in a mode where you are actively competing and it comes down to you and one other crew fighting head to head, cheats are going to be the way that people try to get around, playing fairly and winning. They want to win, they'll use cheats. That's how they play. They don't actually care about skill. So with this, locking it behind Hourglass, or locking Hourglass behind a reputation or some sort of thing that you have to be able to accomplish, is just a barrier that is going to be a time gate for them. They may figure out a way around it, but it's still going to be a time gate. And that's, at the end of the day, I think that's important. Then they talked about the circle size. So if you're familiar with Arena, there is a circle. Once you go outside that circle, much like the Red Sea, you are going to be subject to your ship exploding. In this case, it's the Hourglass. The Hourglass explodes, your ship sinks, you're done. You ran out of time. As the match progresses, the circle is going to reduce. I can already hear the people talking about how this is now a battle royale, whatever you want to call it. The circle reducing, and I think that it's going to take a lot of feedback from the community to find that sweet spot. I think that circle should be somewhere between 15 and 25 minutes. I think if you are looking for the way most games play, a competitive mode should last somewhere between 50 and 30 minutes. Anything more than 30 minutes and you are starting to drag out the experience. It is no longer the fun experience that it should be, the quick, accessible thing. You have to take casual players into account when you're trying to do Hourglass. A person that only has 3 hours a night after the kids are put down, after dinner's taken care of, after significant other allows you to have that time to be able to do what they want while they go do what they want, and you be human beings while still being around each other. If that 3 hours is you wanting to go into Hourglass, and you get into Hourglass and you're in a duo match with your buddy in a sloop, and that fight lasts 45 minutes to an hour, you may as well just have to quit at a certain point, because you're not going to get very many fights in if each one is taking that long to do. And I can understand that there are people who love that, who love those long fights. And I understand that. I understand that is something that it comes down to, both locked in place and just hoping that one person makes a mistake so you have an opportunity to take advantage of it, and you get to capitalize on that. And if it wasn't for that long fight, you probably would have been sunk forever ago. Like, I know that there's situations that, for all intents and purposes, really cater to that sense of victory after a long, grueling match. It's the reason why people like Dark Souls games. It's one of those things where you bash your head against something long enough for enough time, and you get to capitalize on the knowledge that you get after a while. You get to capitalize on that situation, and you get to sit there and be like, it was long, it was grueling, it was arduous, but we did it. And I don't think that that's necessarily the way that the game should be designed for everyone. I think that there's a way for you could design a game around that, but I don't think that should be the status quo. So they're going to be reducing the circle size, and it's not because this is just something they decided. This has been something that a lot of community members have talked about. So it's something that they are actually, again, listening to the feedback, redesigning stuff based on what people are telling them. This is all good stuff. This is all stuff that they need to do to ensure that the player base is happy with the content that they're getting. Otherwise, the content is not engaging, and neither are the players. So happy to see that they're going about this in a way that most people will probably be content with. But they are going to be reducing it. They haven't said how long or when it's going to happen or how quickly it happens either. What I will say is that when this does get implemented, when you go into an Hourglass fight, it is going to feel like a boxing match, and you are going to behoove yourself to actually take advantage of being on the inside, because whenever that circle does start to close, whoever's closest to the center of that circle going to have to deal with the circle a lot less of the time than the person on the outside. Now, do with that what you will. There may be metas and ways to kind of get around that. Then, you could dip in and dip out. It's totally up to you how you play this, but that's just my 2 cents. And honestly, I think it's a good change. I think it's going to be an adjustment for a lot of people, but the goal of it, I think, is good. I think the goal of it to try and get players in and out of Hourglass fights quicker so that it's less painful. It's less of a struggle or less frustrating after a long fight that you then end up losing. I think that's the key there. Is they want to keep people from feeling bad after an extremely long fight, because at the end of the day, yeah, it feels good to win that fight after an hour of fighting, especially in duos. Galleons and brigs less so, but duos can definitely be that, fight a little bit, dip in, things are getting haywire. You've fought that sloop that got 3 shots on them and then pulled out of the circle, pulled out of the spin. Like, you've been there. You know who I'm talking about. You've seen that ship that's like, oh God, we got 1 hit on the mast. Pull us out. We're not gonna fight. We gotta recoup. We have to recenter. We have to get back to being comfortable, and then we can go back in. So it's one of those things where I'm glad that they're doing that aspect of it. But that's not all. They're also doing a prep time reduction, looking at resource stocking, automatic emissary flag raising, and the ability to rematch more quickly. That is, I'm going to be perfectly honest. The automatic flag raising, that's kind of essential, because too often I feel like players are going into Hourglass and they're not raising an emissary flag. And in the emissary flag, it won't be a lot as far as reputation at level 1, but at level 5, that rep does tend to move the bar a little bit more than if it was just the win, right? So I'm glad that they're doing that, because I think that that's really good. I also think that looking at the resource stocking is going to be important as well too. Too often I feel like people are either, you have 0, you have absolutely no, what's it called? Resources, or you have so many that there's no way you could possibly burn through them. Those seem to be like the 2 ways that you have resources in Hourglass. And I think getting into Hourglass and not and having that instance where you're like, I just want to get back in. I lost. I don't feel good. I want to get one more fight in, and I don't want to have to go and stock up an entire ship to have to try and get it. I would really like it just to be able to get in, get one more fight in, and not have to restock everything to have a chance. Because sometimes you go in and you have nothing, and then you happen to win against a crew that just happens to have everything stocked, and great, you're done. But otherwise, you're like, I'm not going to win this because it's going on too long, and we don't have enough cannonballs and planks to kind of outshoot or out attrition this fight. And that's where I'm thinking like, okay, yeah, definitely get the restock in there a little bit faster. Rewards, they're reviewing the rewards for both factions to make sure they both feel meaningful to progress. I'm going to be real honest here. They need to open up the areas at level 50 and keep the curses at 100. And they need to bring stuff for ghosts that give you different colors, give you different effects. They need to do a lot for Athena, because right now I would say that the mysterious stranger cosmetics are all that you really get, and a lot of folks have their look. Like, a lot of folks just like the way that their clothing looks, and the mysterious stranger set is really awesome and I love it, but it's not what I would expect out of a ghost curse based reward system. So just my 2 cents on there. But give players access to the areas at level 50, lock curses behind 100. So there's a carrot on the stick. If you let people in the door and they take a look around, they'll window shop for a while. And eventually they're going to get sick of window shopping and want to buy, but they can't do that if they don't know what stock you have. So you show them what you got, and when they're ready, they'll come back and buy. So they're also taking a second look at commendations, which is good, because I flippin' really hate the way that they design the skeleton curse commendations. They're one of my least favorite things. I hate the fact that you have to get your skeleton curse before you can truly even really progress most of the Reaper faction commendations. And the fact that some of them are so difficult. I'm going to take a look here real quick. We're in it now. So, well, maybe the game may be like, but we're going to take a look at the commendations for the Servants of the Flame, because some of these are ones that you can only get when you're wearing your skeleton curse. And that is simple stuff like completing a sea fort, or after getting your ritual, you have to sink ships representing Guardians of Fortune. Well, most people are getting their curses for their skeletons because there's more cosmetics, and Reapers is just more appealing, I guess. You're less of a nightstick or a glow stick, and you're more of just like a skeleton. But trying to sync other crews as Guardians of Fortune, or that are representing Guardians of Fortune, is not great. That's not a fun one for people to have to try and get. But then there's also ones like completing a ghost ship battle while wearing a skeleton curse. So much stuff that you have to do that it's just like, really? So, and then there's even like other ones in here too that are like, you have to, while wearing a skeleton curse, form an alliance with another crew of skeleton pirate. It's like, I don't think about that stuff, man. I really don't think, like, I like the way my character looks, and I'm not wearing my curse all the time. So when I look at some of this stuff, I'm like, it's like I gotta have my curse on all the time. Now, granted, that's lore aesthetic right there. At the same time, like, that's very much kind of how you should be going about it. But especially with the Guardians of Fortune stuff, while wearing your skeleton curse, you sank ships representing Guardians of Fortune. Okay, well, okay, but why is that one? How is that one different than the other one that I was talking about? After the ritual of flame, sink ships representing the Guardians of Fortune. Okay, well, if I'm sinking ships, then I'm confused, because the other one says you sank ships representing the Guardians of Fortune. Like, there's ones in here that I'm just genuinely confused by. But overall, please go take a look at those and figure out why people hate them, or just ask them, because I'm sure they could be they'd be very happy to tell you why they hate them. But yeah, that's one of those situations where eventually I'll get my ghost curse, and it will probably be after they make these changes. But it is nice to know that they're actually making changes to hunters, or to oh my gosh, Hourglass in the future, because it's sorely needed, and I think that it needs to go further if they expect to have people actually wanting to engage with this. All right, pirates. The last thing that I wanted to touch on, I think for this episode, before I wrap it up here, is something that I talked about last week with the streaming numbers and the Twitch numbers, and just Steam database, because I anticipated that as we would get closer to the release of season 17's Act 3, more and more people would probably come out. They would probably want to check out the actual event and actually kind of like, take the opportunity to get back in and do some of the new commendations and stuff. And while I have seen that to be the case, it doesn't seem to reflect nearly as much, at least on Steam, as I was anticipating. It has gone up, but it hasn't gone up the way I kind of expected it to go up. Now, bear in mind, this is the first weekend of the event, and typically with this stuff, it's going to need to take a little time to get word of mouth out there, so folks know, like, hey, there's new Reaper forts out. The streamers and the content creators are going to make their videos on how best to get these done and what you can get, and people will realize, like, oh, there's a chance for the mega stash to get the 3 chest of fortunes. What a fantastic way to get caught up on these. They're going to come back for a while, at least, for sure. They're going to see a boost. So I want to take a quick look and see, like, okay, well, how did the last 48 hours do for Rare? Because as of the last week, we saw like a pretty scary dip in Steam numbers back on October. No, let's see. So this would have been, this would have been when the servers are down. Okay, so I can't count that. Let's take a look. On Wednesday, at a certain point, Steam was basically down to like 1,600 players. Granted, that dipped when they shut down the servers, but for all intents and purposes, the game has been like sub 2,000 people on Steam for a hot minute. So we did actually see a spike. They're now above 2,000 players on Steam, and concurrently right now, they're over 4,000, which is nice. But for all intents and purposes, it's not a huge spike in what I was anticipating with the new update. It is a spike, and I'm glad that the spike has done well to effectively bring people back to the game, but it hasn't brought people back to the game as much as I was hoping that it would. So at the end of the day, I think it's going to take some time, but I do think that people will come, and I think that when they do come back, they'll have a good time, they'll enjoy it, and we'll have that opportunity to kind of like see, like, okay, well, is Sea of Thieves back right now, or is there still like some work to be done? So we'll have to see. But it was nice to see that at its peak, we got back over the 7,500 range. Cause I think that was an area where it was like, man, we're not even hitting like the 9,000s that we normally are on Steam. But again, this is just one ecosystem. We can't really judge the health of the game based on just the one ecosystem. There may be a surplus of people jumping onto their TVs because they want to check it out and they don't necessarily want to sit on their computer at the moment. So we'll have to see long term what it's going to be like. But it was nice to know that, at least in this case, we're seeing a bump in numbers, whereas it was, hi Fern, motion sensors here, by the way. But it's nice to see that we're getting that little bump so far. All right, pirates, I think that is going to do it for this episode. I know that was a lot, and gosh darn it, sometimes I ramble, but it was really nice to have a lot to talk about this episode. It was nice that there's a lot of folks that are enjoying the new Reaper fortresses, And, if you're one of those folks that you really don't like PvP, you're not a big fan, you're not too worried about the gifts, and you're not too worried about the Reaper loot or the Athena stuff, Safer Seas has you. They've got you. You don't have to worry about it. But I would encourage those, go give it a shot. Go have some fun. And, if it's one thing I've been trying to learn better, be okay with getting sunk. It's not the end of the world. It hurts to lose that kind of supplies. It hurts to get the, to have to deal with the fact that you're like, great. I really didn't want to have to go through all this trouble to have to, restock my boat, and missed out on the opportunity to get the treasure. You can always go back. You can always go back if you want. You don't have to, but you can. You don't have to scuttle right away either, but enjoy yourself. At the end of the day, enjoy the content, take from it what you will. And when you're done, you're done. And don't feel like you have to, put more time in than is absolutely necessary for you to not have fun. I know that the completionists out there are shaking their head like, ha ha ha, you don't understand how I play this game. I do not play to have fun. I play to have checkbox. And I'm like, okay, that's, all right, fair. But at the same time, hopefully you are enjoying it. Hopefully you are enjoying this content. Even if the commendations are light, I would encourage you to go and get the commendations done, so you can go check out the super secret stuff with Lottie. Again, I will just advise you, it is very akin to back in the day when we had to do stuff that we weren't told how to do. And the closest analogous to that I can really explain is probably either Glitterbeard or the Death of DeMarco. It's going to require a little thinking cap stuff if you want to work it out on your own, which I would encourage you, you definitely can. I went and checked it out on my own. I went and wanted to find out because honestly, I was talking to Rare Thief, and I was like, who's Lottie? And they reminded me. I was like, oh, I don't know what that's about. And then I was like, okay, well, I have to go get these commendations knocked out. And then when I realized, I was like, oh, this is a game of chance. I have to sail around and find that last chronicle. And now that I found the last chronicle, I realized, oh, I have to go get all the other stuff done first. Well, shoot. Okay. But I'm glad I went and checked it out, because it's a fantastic bit of lore that they're putting into the game. And I think that they're doing a good job of bringing back a sense of Sea of Thieves that we have not had for a hot minute. So hopefully you get an opportunity to go check it out. I will not spoil that here for some time. Other stuff like Sea of Thieves, stuff I'll spoil at a certain amount of time. But this, much like Glitterbeard back in the day, is one of those things that I think people will enjoy going to do themselves. And I would encourage you to do so. So go get those commendations knocked out, whether you do it in Safer Seas or whether you do it in High Seas. It doesn't matter. Go find out what's going on with Lottie and the super smuggler stuff, and have a good time with it. Enjoy it, because I know that I enjoyed the reveal when I found out what was going on. It was definitely not what I was expecting, so I'm actually happy about that. So we'll get more into that in the future, I'm sure, when more people have actually found out about it, whether it's been spoiled or not. But with that, Pirates, I think that's going to do it. So if you enjoyed this episode, as always, it does wonders to help kind of subscribe on the YouTube aspect of it. When it comes to podcasts, if there is a review system, the reviews always help to kind of educate people on how the content's doing. Sometimes the reviews are just good for folks that are like, is this still going? Is it a real podcast? So many podcasts don't tell you when they're done. And I'm not sure if they're actually updating in nowadays or not. So sometimes those reviews help to kind of let people know, like, hey, yeah, the podcast is still going, believe it or not. You wouldn't think a podcast about Sea of Thieves, this, almost 8 years is still going strong. But here we are, almost getting close up to what we're on episode 389. So we've got 11 more episodes till 400, which I never thought I'd be making 400 episodes of a podcast in my entire life. But we're 11 weeks from that point, which means at this point, let me take a look. We actually got the calendar here. So the 27th is going to be 340. November 3rd will be 390. November 3rd will be 390 or 391, 392, 393, 394, 395, 396, 397, 398, 399. The beginning of the year, January 5th, should be episode 400, which maybe it's time to reach out and see if Mike's available, or maybe even Drew. Maybe I could get Drew to come on the show for episode 400. I don't know. I'll have to reach out to the CM team. It's hard to get people scheduled up for that kind of stuff. Being on the East Coast, it's a lot easier now because it's only a 5-hour difference for me. But it is still difficult because you're literally asking people to give their free time to talk with me about something that they do for a living, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, if not more. And this is a free thing. This is literally just them talking to a community member over an episode. So that's where I will ask the community if you guys would like to have Drew as my next Sea of Thieves interview for Rare, for like the 400th episode. Then you telling Rare will help make that happen. Believe it or not. It worked when Godhammer reached out and said, hey, Rare, it would be fantastic if Mike was available. I passed that on to the community management team. They saw that there was interest and they helped get that scheduled out. If not for the community, I would not be doing, I would not necessarily have the opportunity to get to do interviews with the Rare devs. So I'll put this on the table and say that if you guys help me with spreading the word about getting Drew, Sonic Bob to be on the episode for episode 400 at the beginning of 2026, that would be fantastic. We've got 11 weeks to schedule it out, and it may take that long to get that to happen. So the sooner we start poking, being like, hey, CaptainLogun over there is getting to 400 episodes of the Keelhauled podcast. It'd be kind of cool if he had another dev on like he did for the 200th with Mike. So maybe we could get Mike or Drew. It'd be fantastic to have Drew come on to talk about the game, taking over as kind of the lead for community management, addressal of hot topics and why that got started. Plenty of things that I'd love to talk to him about. So Hoke, my friends, use your internet keyboard warrior skills for something other than debating why Jared Leto shouldn't be allowed to touch any more of the IPs that I love. And let's see if we can get Drew Stevens to get on Keelhauled for episode 400 at the beginning of the year. And with that, pirates, I think that's going to do it. So thank you. I love you. And I look forward to sailing with you on the Sea of Thieves.